you cannot win this game unless you understand your individual powers and
Mm,
you play to those powers and you play to those strengths. If you're trying to be a little bit of everything and not really truly tuning into who your character is and what your powers are, you will not win.
Welcome to Life is the Game, hosted by yours truly, Alexandra Nicole Stone. Get ready to uncover the secrets to mastering your destiny, becoming the main character in your life, and embracing a life filled with meaning and joy. Ready? Let's play. Hello and welcome to Life is the Game. I'm your host, Alexandra Nicole Stone, and today we have Monica Mangelson joining us. Monica is a certified life purpose coach, full-time world traveler, and adventure junkie, and a total foodie as well. She's on a mission to help people live more intentionally and have more fun in the process. Monica, thank you so much for joining me. When I saw your profile, I was just so excited to talk to you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure you look at your life a lot as a game because you're traveling the world, you're living your dream. But tell me, growing up, was there ever a game that sort of influenced you and transformed the way you looked at life?
I wish I could say growing up, yes, but I actually wasn't a really big game person until I went to college and just discovered the world of games, which totally changed everything for me. But if I had to say there was one game that has really like changed the way I look at life, it would be the Harry Potter Battle for Hogwarts. Have you played
Okay.
that one before?
No, tell us about it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a collaborative deck building game where you have up to 4 players and each of you gets your own position. So you can,
Hmm.
be one of the characters from Harry Potter. So Harry Potter, Hermione, Ron, Neville. And you get to pick one of them and each one kind of has their own spin on the game. And then
Okay.
together you tackle different dark arts that kind of come up and then you also are trying to beat several different villains. And the cool thing about the game is that there are 7 levels that kind of go with the different 7 Harry Potter books, and each level has different villains and different like dark arts that come, like different spins on it, and it gets harder and harder and harder as you go.
Okay.
So the thing that I really like about this game is that it is a collaborative game, and I definitely feel like lately in my life towards like the end of college and beyond, I started noticing that life is not meant to be a solo venture. Like we
Hmm.
really do need other people to help us get through this life. It really does take a village, and it's not just for raising kids, it's for raising ourselves, it's for building businesses, it's for building a life that we love. But then the other thing I really like is you cannot win this game unless you understand your individual powers and you play to those powers and you play to those strengths. If you're trying to be a little bit of everything and not really truly tuning into who your character is and what your powers are, you will not win. And it becomes a big struggle and the whole thing is just a massive train wreck. So it's so important to identify who you are and what your strengths are and just own them and just really play to those strengths in order to win. And I feel like that is so true in life as well. Like the more we get to know ourselves, the more we understand who we are and what our strengths are, the more we can just have fun in life, the more we can be successful, and the less of a struggle the whole thing feels.
I love that. It's a challenge. I think a lot of us are programmed to think that we have to do things alone. And I think a lot of us have a hard time being honest with who we are and what we're about because there's just so much noise from the outside world that we let that distract us. And then instead of thinking about what we want, we're thinking about, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what my family wants. This is what maybe my partner wants. And then we lose sight of who it is that we are. And I think especially as a
Absolutely.
woman, right? Like we typically tend to be people pleasers a little bit. So we
Mhm.
get lost in supporting so many other people and their ventures or businesses or desires that we forget to sort of nurture that in ourselves. So I think it's really beautiful that you highlighted that.
Oh, exactly. You totally nailed it. And the crazy thing is, a lot of times we don't even realize it. Like, we think we're chasing dreams that are our own, and then we get there and we're like, why did I even want this? And then
Exactly.
only then do you realize that this is never something I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I think you're one of those people that are really fortunate to have discovered that early on in your life and be like, okay, how can I design my life the way that I want it to be? Can you please share a little bit about your journey and how maybe you discovered what it is that your superpowers are and how you invested in that and kind of where you started out?
Yeah, of course. Well, I just want to say that it is a journey that's constantly unfolding. So I
Mhm.
would love to say that, yes, I've made it, but I feel like I'm still just like very much in the messy middle.
I lo
But that being said, I think my journey started right after high school. I
Mm.
actually signed up to go on this mission trip for my church, and it was a year and a half long. And this
Oh,
19-year-old
wow.
kid moved to Peru, I had never left the country. I didn't even have a passport when I signed up for this. So I was like getting my passport, getting all ready, and then I traveled by myself to Peru to go meet this other group of people. And I just remember getting there, and it was such an emotional journey. Like I was scared, I was excited, I had all the feelings. And I remember getting there and like climbing into my bunk bed at the end of the night, just totally exhausted, totally jet lagged, and just laying there and listening to the traffic and the noise and everything going on and just feeling so at home. And it
Mm.
was the weirdest experience I'd ever had because I had never left the country. I hadn't really left the state of Washington a whole lot. Like I had stayed in the Pacific Northwest and done a little bit of traveling to go see family in the South, but I had been pretty isolated my whole
Mm.
life. And I just remember being like, wow, like this is so different. Everything is different. Like the bed is different, the smells are different, the noises are different, but I feel at home. And so I
Mm.
think that was where the beginning of my travel journey really started, and just it had this huge profound effect on me, in that I was like, there's a whole world out here to explore. And I was just so excited to meet people, to learn the culture, to learn the language, to try all the foods. And it just ignited this passion in me. And it actually affected what I decided to study in college. I went to college and got a degree in international studies. And then right after college, in college is where I met my partner who also loves to travel.
I love that.
And we decided to go to the Peace Corps instead of like pursuing a master's degree and doing all the traditional path. We're like, we are not ready for that. So we got jobs at the Peace Corps, which is a 2-year program. It's a government run program. And we were assigned to go to Mozambique. And then we sold everything. So we had everything packed. We had sold our housing contract. We had someone lined up to buy our car. We had sold all of our furniture. We got rid of everything. And then 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, COVID shut down the world.
Oh,
And so then all
wow.
of a sudden we're like, we are jobless, we are homeless, we have no stuff. And it was supposed to just be a couple of weeks. So that we moved in with my partner's parents, and we were just going to be there for a couple weeks, and then it was
Mhm.
going to be fine. And then a couple weeks became months and months and months. And that's when I realized that I had been waiting for almost a year at this point
Oh my
to
gosh.
let for someone else to tell me I can live my life. I was
Mm.
waiting for somebody else to tell me that life can go on and we can continue. And that's when I started my online business, because I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then it's, kind of gone from there.
You shared so much interesting information, but I think what was it, that emotion, or like what led you to making that decision so early on in your life, like especially that high school decision to just go and go to Peru. And I mean, I went to Peru just for like 14 days last year, and I feel like that was a big decision. So at
Yeah.
such a young age, at 18, 19 years old, like how do you make that decision? What sort of drove it? And what emotions were coming to the surface, maybe like fear or anxiety, and how did you sort of navigate that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I have always been just somebody who jumps into life full force, but it did take me a while to decide to go. And a big reason it took me a while is because my older sister had gone and she did her mission in the Philippines.
Okay.
And I thought it was great for her. I was really excited, but my mom was like, "Yeah, you should go." And she was very like tried to push that on me a lot, I felt, and I
Mhm.
was very stubborn. So I was like, no way, I will never go. I never want to do that. But then she would keep bringing it up and bringing it up. So it became this big point of contention for us. And so I just was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Fast forward a bit, I didn't get into the college that I was actually hoping to go to, and I just was
Mm.
like, "Oh my gosh, what do I even do with my life?" And I have always been a really spiritual, intuitive person,
Mhm.
and so I definitely spent some time kind of meditating and praying and being like, "What should I do?" And it was like this idea, this thought, like it was like almost a verbal thought in my head, like, "You should go on a mission. You should do this." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been fighting with my mom for months about this. I can't tell her that she was right. I can't tell her that I was gonna go." So it took me months to be able to fully embrace it and be like, yeah, I'm going to go. And the second I did, everything just kind of fell into place. And I just kept getting more and more excited. And I don't think I really understood that I was moving to a new country for a year and a half until I was like on the plane. I was like, "Oh my
You're
gosh."
you're like, "That's a year and a half. I'm not going back for a while."
Yeah. And it was a really crazy experience. Like, it was such a cool experience. I mean, obviously, it was super life-changing for me, but it was really hard in a lot of ways. Yeah, it was awesome.
I remember just going to Peru and being in Cusco and thinking like, "Oh, this is a different life." Like, we have so much that we take for granted in, Western culture and USA, and when you go somewhere like that, you really realize like how lucky you are and how kind of all the things that
Yeah.
we expect from our lives, like those are blessings. Like, we have everything to be
Mhm.
grateful for, especially when you go to some local people's homes and you're like, "Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like your like a room is like the size of pardon me, a closet." I was
Mhm.
like, that a year and a half like that, it's like I was like, "Okay, maybe I could do 3 months here," and then I'd miss my amenities, right? You miss these creature
Yeah.
comforts, but that's amazing, and I'm sure when we go on these journeys, they shift our life forever, and it's just
Mhm.
taking that the sort of leap of faith that's the hardest part, right? And even though it took months for you to decide that, it sort of, I think, put you on to where you are going today.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. When did you start realizing that you kinda had free will? Like, you went on this journey, it just sort of was
Mhm.
when we're young, we're just, like, doing things. We're like, "I just need to create movement."
Mhm.
Like, I just
Mhm.
can't be stuck, right? And then
Yeah.
when did you realize that it's sort of like, "Oh my god, like, maybe I can make decisions myself. I can make my decisions intentionally and make this,
Mhm.
like, a lifestyle." When was that really happening for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest time it happened was when I was looking at what to do post-college with my partner, and I was like, "Oh, wait, I don't have to rush right into a master's degree. I
Mhm.
don't have to get an office job." And that was the moment where I was like, "Wow, like, I really get to decide." And it was
Mhm.
kinda scary because I was like, my whole life I've been told what to do, I go
Yeah.
from elementary school to middle school to high school, and obviously my mission was something really different that people don't necessarily experience, but it felt like because my sister had done it, because a lot of my friends kinda did it, it kind of felt like it was along the same path that I was,
Mhm.
supposed to go on. But it wasn't until after college that I was like, "Wow, like, I could do whatever I want." And then, of course, COVID kind of was like, "Just kidding, no, you can't, you're stuck here." But it was that experience, I believe, applying for the Peace Corps and realizing that I didn't have to follow a proposed path that helped me launch a business at the kind of tail end of COVID, and that business then provided the opportunity for me to continue to travel the world with my partner and make it more of a full-time lifestyle.
Tell us a little bit about your business. How did it come to fruition? What was it? And I love that you mentioned that. I'm sorry, before you go into that, but I love that you mentioned that a lot of us are programmed with this idea that life is a linear thing.
Mhm.
You go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you get promoted, you die. You get your retirement,
Yeah.
I think sometime before
Yes.
that, right? And I think one of the things that like I'm discovering and like life is just a series of up and down and side quests. And you think you have your main quest figured out, and then you go on the side quest that lasts you 3 years, right? So tell us about your business and how you got into it and sort of how it supported you on your ultimate journey.
Yeah, so like everything in life, my business has gone through lots of twists and turns. But when I first started, so during COVID, I was actually able to get a really terrible job at senior care.
Oh wow.
Um, and it was terrible. People who work in that, I mean, props to them because I definitely felt used and abused by the end of that and way overworked. And so during some of my shifts, if some of my clients were sleeping or if I had some extra time, I would Pinterest shop for a new life. And I was like, just anything to get me out of here. Like, I just want to
Mhm.
travel. And that's when I stumbled upon this idea of virtual assisting, which essentially is just being somebody's right hand man through the internet. So
Mhm.
it could be email management, it could be social media management, it could be a whole slew of things. And like always, I just decided to jump right into it and just figure it out. So I quit my job cold turkey and just started working. And I was really fortunate within a couple of months to get some clients that were able to kind of sustain that. And then through that experience, I learned a ton about the back end of business because I was in people's businesses. I was seeing what was
Mhm.
working, what wasn't, and it was fascinating to me. I loved it, but I hated. not being able to make decisions that were impactful.
Mm,
So there's a lot of times I was working people's businesses and I was like, wow, if you did this a little bit differently, like it might be more efficient, you might see better growth, but then it wasn't my call to make. And so then I
mm,
had to just kind of sit and watch some of my clients' businesses not do super great when I felt like I could see something worth trying to see if it would take off.
mm,
So at that point, I decided that I really wanted to pivot. I wanted to be a business owner. And so
mm,
at that point, I decided to go full into web design, and
mm,
my partner came with me through this whole journey. So we decided together that we were going to do web design and branding. And so we took lots of courses, we learned how to do it, and we did web design for about a year and we loved it. And through this process, we had been traveling the world. And eventually, our friends and family were like, oh my gosh, this thing you're doing is actually working and it's really cool. So, can you help me do the same? And so, we ended up helping like 5 or 6 different friends or family members launch their businesses so that they can enjoy that freedom. And I loved that coaching aspect. I just loved the intentionality behind it. I loved going through the mindset with them. I loved going through all the possibilities with them. And I became addicted. Like, I was just like, I need more of this. And so that's when I fully jumped into coaching and I got coaching certified. And that is where I am today. So it's been a journey.
I want you to share a little bit about that experience of like when you start out, right? So I think a lot of people have something that they want to do, they want to build for themselves, but they're like terrified of where to start. And how did you like start like doing outreach or start getting clients? Like, can you share a little bit about how did you start getting your clients and like growing your business when as someone who maybe didn't have a big portfolio or something like how did you just
Mhm.
start getting out there and getting people through the door and building that trust? Share that experience.
Yeah, so Facebook has become my best friend. That's where I've
Interesting.
gotten like 80% or more of my clients. And then also my own personal network. So people I already knew, just putting it out there, being like, hey, I'm doing this new cool thing. And then they need it or they know somebody who needs it. And so I've had a lot of clients come through my own personal network. And then the other thing is if you don't have a big portfolio, build one. You know,
Mm,
there's nothing to say that you can't put mock projects in a portfolio, that you can't
right.
go out there and create your own, so for web design, for example, I really wanted to work with more travel, people who love to travel. And so
Mm,
I went out there and I created fictitious brands and websites for them that were travel focused. And so then my portfolio was really talking to those people and it attracted those clients to me, if that makes sense.
I love
So
it.
it was a lot of like putting myself out there on Facebook, talking to my personal network, and then just building a portfolio that speaks to the people that I wanted to be working with.
Mhm. I love that. That's the scariest part, I think, for a
Mhm.
lot of people who are just starting out. And like I'm sort of even going through that my own experience with that is just like, how do you just like shamelessly promote yourself? And how do you overcome that imposter syndrome and just get out there and start doing the thing? Right. I
Yeah.
think we all get like caught up in our head, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know
Mhm.
if anyone will find value in the things that I do. But you just have to put yourself out there and you have to believe in yourself. Was
Yeah.
there a sort of, I would like to say, like, was there an ideal version of yourself that you had in your mind? Like, as you were going through this, was there like a visual that you had of like, I like to say, like, we're the main characters in our life, right?
Mhm.
And I like to think about like the person that we're becoming is the avatar, right? And, like,
Mhm.
we have that ideal version of ourselves, and then we're like building with our journey. So, did you have someone like that in your mind as you were doing all these things? Like, maybe it was a lifestyle that they had, or what was that avatar in your mind?
It was mostly a lifestyle for sure. Like, I
Mm,
just wanted to travel, but I didn't wanna be an influencer. I didn't wanna look nice every day. I didn't wanna spend my time, like, behind the phone trying to capture the perfect moment. I wanted to be living the perfect moment.
mm,
And so it was definitely kind of that persona of somebody who travels and does crazy things and says yes to adventures and tries all the new foods. But it wasn't until probably a year, maybe a year and a half into business that I was like, "Okay, like, who am I actually working towards becoming for
mm,
me personally?" And that's when I went in and I love Pinterest. I'm a really visual person, and so I made a secret Pinterest board of, like, my dream life, and it was, like, destinations, and it was the clothing I was gonna be wearing, and it was the kind of business I would be having, And that's when it kind of became like, oh, okay, like there's this persona that I'm working towards becoming. And it was somebody who was confident, who was excited, who was adventurous, who made a difference in people's lives. And then I was able to kind of ask her questions, be like, okay, like, what would you do in this situation? And then that kind of have my future self tell me, okay, in this moment, you need to put yourself out there. You need to apply for podcasts. You need to get on Podmatch. You need to go sign up for that speaking event. And it was all of these different things that kind of have helped me line up to become that person. And then I can say, okay, cool. Like I have become that person in certain aspects. Now what? And then I can do that same activity again to kind of project forward and say, okay, who do I want to become now? Like, what am I going to be working towards now?
I love that. I love that you're saying you're asking that person questions, right? Because you're already that person. It's funny because when you think about the person you want to become, like that person's already in you. But you just have
Mhm.
all this sort of noise that's
Mhm.
distracting you from tapping into that
Yeah.
higher knowledge, which you already possess. So being able to have that conversation and then take those bold decisions is such a big part of that and your personal growth. What do you think were some challenges that you faced sort of along the way when you're like traveling the world? Tell us a little bit. Were you just like living your dream life with your partner and traveling the world? Like, or what were those some of those low moments that you're experiencing? Maybe your highest high. Tell us a little bit your lowest lows or your highest highs along that sort of journey where you're like, is this the dream life that I've always wanted?
Yeah. That's a really good question. We've had lots of lows, like really
Mhm.
low moments and lots of like really beautiful high moments and then a whole lot of moments right in the middle. I A really interesting thing that has happened to me that I've been working to overcome is this idea of always wanting more, always wanting to be more, always wanting to be in different places, always wanting to like I look back at my life and I'm like, wow, I've been to so many cool places. I've done so many cool things, but there have been times where I've been living in this little bungalow in Guatemala and I'm like, man, I really can't wait until we can go back to Peru. Or I'm like, man, like I really like I see people on social media, I'm like, wow, they're in Costa Rica. We should go to Costa Rica. And but
Mhm.
I'm living in Guatemala, like I'm doing the thing, but I'm
Mhm.
constantly looking at other people and being like, wow, like they're doing this, I want to do that. Or like, oh man, like in the digital nomad space, people who travel full time, there is kind of a subcategory of people who are what I call country counters who just like to say, oh, I've been to 86 countries and I'm so
Mhm.
great. And so they kind of project that. I'm like, wow, I haven't been to that many yet because I spend longer in each country.
Mhm.
And so I was like, man, like, can I even call myself a traveler if I haven't been to as many places as they have? And it's really been this fight against comparing and also this fight against like being discontent with where I'm at. And so I feel like there's this really tricky balance that I'm working to find between being really content with what you have and also be shooting for more and working towards more. And being able to kind of find that balance has been really tricky. But I've had so many beautiful moments of just the best moments, the biggest highs have always been connecting with local people and
Mhm.
just feeling so much in common with them, even though so much is different about the way they were raised, about the way I was raised, about the religions they practice, about everything. They're so like at the core, all of us have the same. Like we're just the same. We want the same things. We want to be happy. We want to be successful. We want to have loved ones all around us. And being able to kind of tap into that sameness is such a, a beautiful experience. It's such a cool experience. I can't even describe how awesome it is unless it's something that you've experienced.
Yeah.
It just changes everything for you because you realize that there's so many things that just don't matter as much. And I feel like I mean, I'm from the States, I'm from the United States of America, but I feel like so often we're shoved like everyone is trying to tell us how different we are from everybody else in
Mhm.
every aspect. But really, at the end of the day, we're all the same. And if we can kind of get past the initial differences to really connect to that like sameness, it just opens our heart for so much more love and connectivity, and it's such a cool experience.
I think that's something that I've found in my travels too, and especially this like last year in Peru is just there is just so much love, and the local people are just they just welcome you and they're so open. And the thing is, like, if you give them the time of day and if you just have a conversation with someone, like my
Yeah.
Spanish is like pretty bad, but like I was having conversations in Spanish and they're so patient with me. And like I was probably saying
Mhm.
like, you know, 30% of the words wrong, but it's like people will sit there and they just love having a conversation with you. And
Yeah.
it's this thing where it's like, oh my gosh, not only do I feel seen, but they're feeling seen. And it's,
Mhm.
I mean, at our core level, like all we
Yeah.
ever wanted as human beings is to be seen, is to be understood. And that thing where you're saying, and you realize like, we're not that different, you know? Or I was looking at my shaman master, Roberto, like he's just out there like singing in the mountains, not like, he's like the happiest person in the world in my eyes. And like the thing is like that's his choice. He chooses that
Mhm.
every day
Mhm.
because he chooses not to be bogged down by, a lot of us are like having this like self-imposed misery, right? And
Yeah.
when you see him like liberated, you're like, why? You know, I have that. There's that in me too. Like that, I just need to make that choice. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of the times in like Western culture and being from the United States, we're so inundated with options that we like overcomplicate our lives. And
Mhm.
I mean, I it happens to me all the time where I'm just feeling overwhelmed or like I'm not good enough, or like we said, you're comparing yourself to others and you're depressed or whatever. And then you see in these places where they have so little, but they love so much and they're so satisfied with what they have, even if there's is a struggle on you, and you start asking yourself, like, what is this thing that I'm even stressing about it? Are all these like trivial things even worth me stressing out and being like causing all this like self-imposed misery? And then you realize like when you're talking to these people, like, all this like all that matters is being like is low, right? Like
Mhm.
having a roof over your head, having food to eat, having shared community and companionship, right? And understanding. And that feeds the soul more than any amount of money or popularity would.
Mhm.
So I think it's something that like after I left, I was really just thinking about all the time. I was like, there's this feeling that I felt there that is like such a gift. Were you when was this something that you did when you were in your first sorry, the mission with your church? Were you really involved with the people, and do you think that sort of
Mhm.
helped you create that connection that you sort of carried along with you throughout the rest of your life?
Oh, for sure. So, part of my job on this mission trip was I was partnered with different people from all over the world. So, sometimes I
Mm,
had people who were from Peru, sometimes who were from Brazil, sometimes they were from Ecuador, sometimes they're from the States. So, like, I was always living with somebody from a different background than I had. And then we would go out and we would go into the homes of people and we would offer service and we would talk to them and we'd get to know them and we'd teach them about the gospel and just different things like that. And I remember a really specific moment about maybe a year into it. So I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt like I knew Spanish. I felt like I understood what was going on. And I went into this guy's house. He was probably, I don't know, 6 years older than me. So he's a pretty young guy still. And I remember talking to him, and he had just lost custody of his daughter, and he was so crushed and so heartbroken. And in my life, I'm not gonna say I had a hard life because I didn't, but I definitely had some really disappointing moments in my life. I had some challenges really early on as a kid, and I remember looking into his eyes, and I don't know how to describe it other than just this like soul connection. Like I have never
mm,
felt that with any other human. And I just felt so connected. I felt his pain and I felt like he felt my pain. And I felt like we just had this understanding. And I realized that everything that I had been through up until that point was for this moment to connect with this
mm,
other human and help him start to make changes in his life. By the time I left that area, he was able to kind of reestablish connection with his daughter. He was able to pull himself out of that depression. And I don't want to say at all that had much to do with me, but I do feel like that was the moment that I was like, I everything I've been through makes sense. Like everything in this life makes sense. And I can have this kind of soul connection with more people and I can help them better their lives. I can help them kind of claw themselves out of dark places at the same time that it was helping me. Like, it wasn't at all just like a one-way thing, it was such a mutually beneficial thing, and it was such a powerful experience. And I'm not even sure I'm answering the original question you asked anymore, but I definitely feel like that was the moment where I was like, I can connect people all over the world. Like, this is so cool that we all have that kind of core, like going back to what we were talking about, those core desires. Like, we're so similar.
I think that's the coolest part about life that a lot of people, I think, need to start like nurturing within themselves. But it's like life is this culmination of all of our journeys. And the more side quests we go on, like you never know what's waiting for you in this life. Like, you might think, I think especially when you're younger, you think you know what you want. You're like, I want to do this, or I want to do, like I wanted to work in nightlife for a long time, right? And then you go on these like life journeys and you do that and you're like, I don't like nightlife at all. Like, right? Like this is terrible or whatever. Like, I actually want to connect to people. And it's these layers and layers and these journeys that we go on throughout our life that like build our character and help us peel off the layers and discover like who is it that we really are and like what is it that we really want. And that's why I think it's so important to, I say like to everyone, like take risks, or like I try to fail, because even like it's not a huge endangering risk, but like you took a risk going on that trip. But by taking that risk, you discovered so many dimensions of yourself that otherwise you would have never even unearthed, right? Like you might
Mhm.
not even be here right now in this moment having this conversation or having that pool of knowledge. So I think it is like everything, all these instincts or all these feelings that we have inside us that we want to explore, we have to give ourselves the chance to explore those
Mhm.
things, because you never know what's going to be waiting for you on the other side of that journey. And first it's like, oh, you're having an identity crisis as an 18-year-old and you're, going on this journey of self-discovery, whether or not you knew it. But then it's like, oh my gosh, I found this gift. Like this person was able to give me this gift and I was able to give them this gift, which in turn like shapes the rest of your life. Right.
Mhm.
And I think it's so, a lot of more people need to do that. And it's so beautiful that you got to do that at such an early age. Have you been like telling other people in your life, like when you're meeting young people, are you telling them to go and travel and get out there? Like, what
Yes.
has that experience been like for you?
Oh my gosh, yes, as much as I possibly can. I just want everyone to go outside of their bubble, like so far outside of their bubble that they can just realize that there's a whole big world out there. I actually, one of my big reasons for showing up and continuing to try to build myself and my business is so that I can take my nieces and nephews outside the country on their first trip. Like, I want to
Mm,
be part of that so much because I know what a profound impact that can have. And it's something that is so wild to me. I just feel like the mentality in the States is that people don't feel like there's anything better out than the States, and so they don't leave, and it's crazy to me because you just don't know what you don't know until you go out there and you experience it. So yeah, absolutely. I definitely just wanna shout it from the rooftops that everyone needs to go on a journey, and it's not, we're not talking about cruises here, we're not talking about, like, super catered, like, tourist trips. We're talking about, like, an actual living experience where you're going and you're talking to the locals and you're really investing in this culture and learning about it, and
mhm.
just it's absolutely life-changing.
And how do you think maybe someone who is like, this is all new for them? What would you recommend as like a starting place for someone where they maybe don't want to go full submerged, like fully
Mhm.
submersed in that culture, but they want to just like dip their toes into the pool, so to speak? Like, what's that process like for a newbie traveler that you would suggest?
Yeah, there's so many ways. My mother-in-law is super anxious when it comes to traveling and
Mm,
trying new experiences. And so I feel like there are so many ways to dip your toes into new cultures and like just build up that confidence little by little. So it could even be going to like a different side of your hometown and like going in
mm,
and like investing in the culture in your hometown and like going out of your way to like break routines and to try new things and to be a tourist in your own town. It's a really good way to start to kind of build up that confidence. And then you can just start small. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to move somewhere for a year and a half, although in my experience, it was a fabulous experience, but I know that's a lot for a lot of people.
yeah.
But like, just like you did, just like go on a trip for a couple of weeks, like, and just kind of build up that confidence. I
Mm,
know in my own journey, My partner is a lot more cautious than I am, and so he needed a lot more support, I
Encouragement.
guess. We
Yeah.
needed to kinda, like, ease into it a little bit
Yeah.
more, and so we started off with just, like, road tripping around the States, and then
Mm.
we went and we moved to Guatemala for 4 months, and then we came back, and we were back in the States for a while, and then we planned a trip through Southeast Asia, and we were in Southeast Asia for a while, going to different countries, but we had a return ticket. And now the way we travel now is we're booking tickets and booking our places when we're in the airport and figuring out where we're gonna live. And then people are like, "When are you coming
Wild.
back?" And we're like, "I don't really know. Like, we'll see." And it's so different, but it definitely is something that we had to ease into. So give yourself grace. Like, if that's something that makes you nervous, that is okay. It's okay
Mhm.
to be nervous for new things. That is just your brain just trying to protect you from the unknown. And so just embrace it and just start by like going being a tourist in your own town, trying new things, breaking your routine, and just start small, and those little wins will build on itself because your brain is gonna be able to relax and say, "Oh, I can handle myself in new situations."
Yes.
And it is a fabulous experience, and I am learning and growing, and it's gonna become easier and easier, and the next thing you know, you're gonna be moving to Peru with me for a year and a
Yeah.
half.
I think that is so true because I remember when I booked my flight to Peru, I went on a solo trip and I was like, so I booked everything and it was cool. And then I started getting really anxious. I was like, oh my gosh, there's like a lot of connecting flights. There's a lot like, I don't know, you start
Yeah.
freaking out over all this random stuff, but I got food poisoning. I got all this. I've made it through. It was fine.
Mhm.
I had so much fun. And then I remember I came back and I was telling people, oh yeah, I went and I did, like I went and did the ceremonies and they're like, "You went by yourself? Like, you're so brave." And I was even talking to guys and I was like, I mean, I guess it's brave, right? Like, I guess you have to be a little bit bold or maybe it was I mean, I was always cognizant about like safety and stuff like that, right? But it's like I feel I want to encourage people even when you don't have someone in your life to go with, like
Mhm.
build that up. Like before that, I went on a solo trip up to Olympic National Park for like a week. I had an Airbnb, but I was like every day I was driving for a few hours, going to all the different locations and that helped me build my courage. Like, I don't think if I did that, I would be brave
Mhm.
enough to go to Peru on my
Mhm.
own. But I think there's also something like it's okay to travel by yourself because I feel like a lot of the times, maybe when I was younger, I was like always waiting for a partner or a friend, and maybe they weren't in the same
Mhm.
financial or mental place as I was and able to move that decision. And what was happening is that I felt like I was always putting my desires to travel on
Mhm.
hold. So hearing your story, I'm like, it's possible even just by yourself. Like, obviously be smart, plan and
Yeah.
try to mitigate, like risk. But like going through those experiences, it's like, okay, you get less every time you do it, you get less anxiety. I was getting anxiety like a lot of the times, you know? So then I was like, it's also like half anxiety, half wonder. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is so cool.
Mhm.
Why haven't I been doing this my whole life? And it becomes like also like that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If your avatar is someone who
Mhm.
travels a lot, right? The more and more you travel, you're gonna end up like you, where it's like, okay, I'm booking flights, I'm booking things.
Yes.
It starts becoming a muscle memory versus this like, oh my gosh, this source of panic or anxiety. The unknown becomes like you get comfortable with the unknown,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's
Mhm.
like the biggest sign of growth is like when you can get comfortable and like start surfing it out when there's so much
Yeah.
unknown, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like, oh my gosh, I've grown.
Yeah. Yeah, I think another big aspect of that is just recognizing that fear is your friend. Like, it doesn't have
Mm,
to be this scary thing like, "Oh my gosh, I'm afraid, so therefore I can't do it." But I kind of think of it as almost like a video game, which is funny because
yeah.
I'm not a big video game person.
Yeah.
But when you're reaching the end of the level, you tackle the biggest monster to prove that you
Yeah.
can level up, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with fear. Like, fear can be that indicator, like, "Oh my gosh, you are about to go on a journey that is going to
Mm,
change you." And so you can kind of lean into that fear and kind of follow it because our brains like to be comfortable. And
yeah.
our brain's job is not to make us happy, it's to keep us alive. And so our
Mm,
brain's like, I know if I go to this store and this restaurant and I do this every single day, I have proven that we can keep you alive. So let's
yeah.
do that. And then the second that you're like, okay, I want to go travel, I want to go to a new place, I want to go by myself, your brain's gonna be like, I don't know if we can survive that. We've never done that before. And it just freaks out. But the thing is, if you kind of follow that and be like, "Hey, this is me getting ready to level up. This is me getting ready to expand my world and make it a little bit bigger,
Mm,
and it's okay that I'm afraid. This is natural." I mean, I feel like society has taught us to be afraid, but also our brains are telling us to be afraid,
yeah.
and it gives us this opportunity. It's almost like a roadmap. Like it says, "Okay, I'm afraid of this thing. That means if I lean into that, it's going to help expand my world. It's gonna help me level up. It's gonna help me become the next best version of myself."
Well, the funny thing is, like, in when we play games or like role playing games, like we do scary stuff all the times. Like we're
Mhm.
like jumping, we're like the top of this mountain, and you want to like jump off and get to the other side, and you're like, well, I'm probably gonna die, but let's do it anyways just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because like, wouldn't it be fun? Like, why do we have this mentality when we're playing games? But then obviously you don't want to jump off the cliff and kill yourself. But like, these are like the
Yeah.
metaphors for your life. It's like why don't we just look at our life and be like, okay, like that's scary. It's different. It's okay. Fear
Mhm.
will ride in the back seat, but wouldn't it be fun? Like,
Mhm.
isn't there so much more? Like, there's so much undiscovered territory. All right. Like,
Yeah.
and for me, like, I always love when I see a map on in a game and it's all like dark. I'm like,
Mhm.
part of the biggest pleasure for me in like those games is like, how do I uncover the dark, like those
Mhm.
maps and
Mhm.
see like the new
Mhm.
worlds and discover those
Yeah.
things? And in games, we're like super excited for those like reveals, right?
Mhm.
And for those journeys. But in life we're just paralyzed by fear, so how do we just shift that and say like fear is going to be there, right?
Mhm.
And we're there, we're gonna hold its hand, we're gonna go do it anyways because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
also so much excitement at the same time, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting. I always love looking at like little children and how they learn without like societal pressures.
Oh my
Because if you
gosh.
think of like a little baby who like starts to crawl for the first time, they get up on their hands and knees and they rock and then they fall flat on their face. And could you imagine if you're like, oh my gosh, you're what an idiot. Like just stay there. Like don't even try again. You just should stay there for the rest of your life on the floor. Like
Yeah.
they would never get anywhere in life. And so just remembering that, like, not to take ourselves so seriously. And I feel like in games, we're able to explore and try new things and like, okay, I might fail, but so what? Like, we're just giving ourselves permission to fail and to not take ourselves so seriously. But then in real life, we're like, oh my gosh, if I mess up even once, like I can't ever try that thing again.
Yeah.
And then we're not letting ourselves try and thrive and and learn, and instead we're so like we take ourselves way too seriously in real life,
Mhm.
and I it's so deeply ingrained in us. It is something that I believe that we've kind of been taught like
Yeah, of
since we were
course.
really little, that we
Don't
had to
do that,
pass or
don't touch
fail.
this.
Exactly, exactly. And if you get it wrong, then you get a huge red check mark on your paper and how dare like, and
Yeah.
it's been ingrained into us since we were little that we cannot fail. But not allowing ourselves to fail is not allowing ourselves to live and to fully embrace life.
And now that you've sort of started looking at life a little bit more as like, let's call it a game, right? It's like
Mhm.
you're making these intentional decisions, you're thinking about where you want to go and who you want to be, right? How does this like lens of looking at your life as a game start like impacting your daily decisions and what your, this next phase of your life, right? And your next phase of your life's journey?
Yeah, in so many different ways, but one of the biggest ones actually that just came up today when I was writing my to-do list is just to ask myself, how can I have more fun? Like games are meant to be fun, life is meant to be fun. How can we make this more fun? And the
Mhm.
more we have fun, the more I believe that we are going to be successful. We're going to have that energy that kind of brings people into our world that we need at that time to help us achieve greater things. And so just looking at it as like, this is supposed to be enjoyable. We're supposed to be
Yes.
having fun here. Like, there's no
Yes.
point of just like putting your head down and just working to work, Like,
Yeah.
let's have more fun. And that changes everything for me.
On a micro level, how are you having more fun? Or like, how is the work? How are you imbuing the work? That's a weird word, but like, how are you adding fun into the work that you do or into your interactions? Like, what's worked for you personally?
One of the biggest ways for me to get out of my own head is to have a
Mm.
dance party. And I
Oh, I
am
love that.
the worst dancer. Like I am not a good dancer, but the second I really like let loose and let my body just move the way it wants to, the easier it is to, like, just kind of bring in that creativity, to just kinda let go of my is it inhibitions? Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think
And
so.
just to, like I think so, right?
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah, cool, we'll just go with it then. And just, like, let myself relax almost and just stop taking myself so seriously and stop trying to look good or impress anybody, you know? And then also just to like, in my line of work, I do a lot of writing. I'm not a very good writer. I also do a lot of speaking. And so my goal is always to make it feel like you're hanging out with me. I don't wanna
Mm,
present myself as someone I'm not online. Like, I just want it to be relaxed. I want it to be fun. I There's typos everywhere. I don't care. Like, I just need it to feel authentic. And the more that I can kind of embrace that authenticity, and the more I can kind of be like, okay, like this is who I truly am translated into the online space, the more fun it is. Because if you're trying to be someone you're not, it's never fun. It's just stressful the whole time. And so just being able to fully embrace the
yeah,
imperfected side of
I
me.
love that. I love that. I think there's something beautiful and simple and like easily applicable of like just be and giving yourself the freedom to just be. And like honestly, what you said was so like healing for me because like as I've been growing this podcast and it's something that I've been combating for a while, like I have this like pantomime version of me,
Mm,
right? Like this polished, perfect. And as I'm
yeah.
trying to be everywhere at once, like in this digital space, because I'm trying to figure out what's working for me and helping this grow, it's like I'm feeling everything feels so stressed out and it feels like so pressure that the whole
Mhm,
point of like life is the game and the whole point of this experience and this journey for me has is like gets fuzzy sometimes and I forget to have
mhm,
fun because I'm always trying to be so like I'm
mhm,
so rigid and I'm trying to like always deliver value, but it's like that's already in me, right? Like you
mhm,
just have to be
mhm,
and I just have to let it out. And over time it gets better. And I think what you're saying more is like people value authenticity,
mhm,
right? Like there's so much polished BS stuff out there.
mhm.
Like people just want you. Like
Yeah.
you're your number one product. Like right? Like they just want to
Mhm,
tap into
mhm,
you. Your truest followers or your, you know, your truest audience are the people that you're gonna have the most positive impact in their life. Like they just want you
mhm.
uninhibited. Like
Yeah,
just as you are. So
exactly.
learning to just be and giving yourself permission to just be is like a superpower.
It is, and it's a constant struggle, like, I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm really good at it," but there's so many times, like, just this morning is a great example where I
Mhm.
was just so stressed out and unmotivated and like, "Oh, like, I don't even know, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I should just get a real job," like, all of these thoughts were in my head, and it was the second that I was like, "Wait a second, like, why am I doing this? Like, I need to be having more fun." And the second I wrote that down on my paper, I was like, okay, like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be setting a timer, and every 45 minutes, we're going to be getting up and we're going to be moving. And we're going to I made myself this little like chocolate drink thing because I was like, that
Yeah.
sounds fun. And I just kind of just started embracing the fun. And it
Mm.
has led, like, I was like, how am I going to get on a podcast with this energy? And I just feel like since I was able to kind of flip that script, it's so much easier to just be, and I'm having a great time. This is so fun, and
Yeah.
it never would have happened if I hadn't been cognizant of it. Like, okay, why am I stressed out? I'm stressed out because I'm trying to be too perfect. So how can I
Yes.
just be me? How can I support myself better? How can I be more authentic? How can I show up better?
I love that. I love that. And that was like kind of how I was in this call. I was this morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like late. I'm struggling. It's like technic camera doesn't want to work. It's like, I was like, so sorry. I was like, from the minute I chilled that, you know, I was like, you know what? Screw all that process. I was
Yeah,
like, I'm just here to have a conversation with you.
yeah.
Like, you know, like at the end of the day, we're just here to talk and like share and connect and that's what it's really all about. And then when I started leaning into that, like all of a sudden it started being fun and not stressful anymore.
Mhm, mhm, yeah, for sure.
What does the idea of living life as a game mean to you personally?
I think we kinda touched on this already, but just this idea of, like, not taking myself so seriously. Like, there are so many unknowns that are coming, and just, like, embracing it and just letting it be fun and trying new things, and maybe I'll learn that I really love pasta making, but I never would have known that if I had never learned to make pasta. You know, like, just
Yeah.
allowing myself to try new things and to be silly and to be goofy and just to know that, like, nothing is permanent. Like I can undo pretty much anything. So like if I go take a pasta making class and I hate making pasta, then great, I never have to make pasta again. Or even in my business where I started out as a virtual assistant and then I was like, I don't love this. I could change it. And then when I was like, actually, there's this other part of business that I really like, I can dive into that and I don't have to be one thing my whole life. Like I can pivot, I can change, I can adapt, and
I love that.
I just don't have to take myself so seriously. I don't have to be great at any one thing. I can be good at a lot of things.
I love that. I think that's probably like one of the single most important pieces of advice anyone can really take is that you can change anytime. Like you can change your path that you're on. Nothing
Mhm.
has permanence. And I like to say that like every single decision you make, or like even if you fail, like every time you make a choice, it's kind of like in a game, like if you die, you respawn, you come back to life,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
every single time you make a decision and you change course, it's like you coming back to life. You're just
Mhm.
hitting the refresh button and you're respawning. But the best thing is, like in a game, even if you died doing something, you come back to life, you have all your prior knowledge, you have all your prior
Yeah.
experience. So
Mhm.
everything that you do moves you forward. And you're like, okay, I can hit the refresh, but guess what? I didn't lose that load data. Like I
Mhm.
still have all my previous experiences in my mind and that's all going to fuel me moving forward every time I change my decision.
No, absolutely, absolutely. There are so many people that I talk to who are like, "Man, like, I wish I had talked to you 20 years ago. Like, I've wasted so much time in my life." And I'm like, "No, like, nothing you did in your life was a waste because now
Mhm.
you know, like, even if you just learned that's not what you want, that is so valuable."
Yeah.
And a lot of people are afraid to shift careers because they've spent so much money in school or they've spent
Yeah.
10 years in this job and they've climbed the ladder. But like, it's all part of who you are, and it's
Mm.
prepared you for the next leap. Like, you don't have to stay stagnant because you feel like you've already spent so much to get there. You can use that as, "Okay, great, now I have all of this knowledge, I have all of this experience, I have all of these connections. Now I can use that going into the next version of me, the next level of me."
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Monica. Like, this has been such a fun conversation, and I want to keep in touch with you on a personal level. Like,
For
I think I have
sure.
some notes to take from you, and I think you gave me your website and your tell people where to find you, and like how you can help them out, let them know.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty easy to find. Just if you search Austin and Monica pretty much anywhere. That's my website. That's my social media handles, Austin and Monica. And then I also have a podcast, the Profitable Nomad Couple podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's currently going through an iteration. It's going through a twist and a turn, but it's really fun. We talk about entrepreneurship, mindset, psychology. We talk about traveling. So yeah, come join me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and until next time.